Hi everybody, this is a session focused on demos that you'll see of actual applications that are created on top of the NetBeans platform. What the NetBeans platform is and details about that, that's not being covered here. There's a session about that from 2 to 3 in Continental Ballroom 789, a session called Getting Started with the NetBeans platform. This is really all about people from different countries in the world, Holland, Sweden, US, showing what they're doing with the NetBeans platform, all the different contexts where it's being used. My name is Geert-Jan. The speakers are Timon, Sam, Rob, Henry, and Steven from various organizations. They'll introduce themselves, they'll show you what they've been doing, and at the end, hopefully, there'll be some discussion and questions. And also feel free to shout out any question you might have. It's quite a small group. We can keep this relatively informal. So if you want to interject at any point, feel free to do so. So let's begin with Timon talking about AgraSense.
Hello. Yeah, here it is. I will give you a demonstration of AgraSense, which is a farm management software. We will start here.
And it's a Duke's Choice Award winner this year, so it's really cool.
Of course it is. Well, our centerpiece is a map, because everything what's happening on the farm is geographical related. So on the left side we have a farm, and already created one, and there's all kinds of data you can really drag and drop onto the map. So here I have a shapefile which I exported from geographical software. And I can just drag it onto the map, and I see the full extent of my farm. We just created a random color generator because it looks a lot more cheerful than all black fields. So we have some nice colors here on the map. Well, here we have the layer list, which you can use to navigate through to things you want to do. So if you're lost and you can't find your farm anymore, you just click on it and it will zoom to the content. Let's remove it again. We also can display machines on the map. Here I've created a tractor. I can also drag it on the map and zoom to it. And here I can see where my tractor is currently moving. We implemented a dummy GPS tracking. We already created an app for Android, which you can activate, and you say which machine you are on, and it will use the GPS from the phone to connect it. So if I enable it, you will see it starts running on the map. And you can see you now have to call the fire department because it will run into the water.
So I already have a question. Why isn't this application running in a browser? This should be a web application.
Why? No, it shouldn't. We actually tried to do something similar in a web application, and it would just crash the browser because there's too much going on. And if you wanted to do this on a browser and you want to have a real-time GPS tracking, you would have to refresh the data every few seconds, which will be a huge strain for your browser's JavaScript parser. Right. And well, that's not going nicely. Well, we also have support for various types of sensor data. I have one example here. This is a crop circle file. I opened it here as well. I can make it a little bigger. This is the data that's actually in the file. It's just a very simple CSV format, and we can also visualize it so you can see what it looks like. I can also put it on the map, so I can now see it relatively to the rest. I can zoom to it. I can change the palette because all the sensor data, well, the sensors are attached to spraying beams, and they're making pictures of the soil, and they calculate the amount of green pixels that are on the picture. So here you can see the lower part of the field is doing better than the higher part of the field. And well, I know this farm, I've been there, and this water here, this is salt water. And there's a dike here, and you have the salt water going below the dike, and you have a salt in your soil, which affects the growing of your crop. So now this farmer can see that the crop growing is falling behind in the northern part of the field. So he can do maybe apply some extra water or some agent which will reduce the amount of salt. We also have support for tasks, and tasks you are able to export to your actual machine. So you can create an advanced and finely grained spraying plan, and you can put it on a USB stick and put it in the terminal of your tractor, and it will execute it automatically. And you can read a paper while you're on the tractor. You don't have to drive even anymore. I will also show you now another application we have created for Kvernaland, which is a machine manufacturer. They make the spraying devices. And it looks very similar because it reuses a lot of the modules from AgroSense. Because we use a combination of the NetBeans platform and Maven, it's very, very easy to reuse modules. So we have exactly the same map, we have the same farm, fields, and so forth. Okay, well this is the San Francisco airport, and well, let's pretend Geert-Jan is a farmer, and he has this field here, and he wants to do something with it. And he thought, well, I'm a customer, and I'm a huge NetBeans fan, and I go to Geert-Jan and say, well, I want to pay you a lot of money if you can do something with a NetBeans logo on your field. So that's what we are going to do. So I imported a BMP file. I can open it. It's just an image. I took one from the internet and converted it into black and white and saved it as BMP, so nothing fancy here. Then I have created a field. I can display it on the map. You can also already see it. Let's create a new field. New field. Now I spoiled the surprise. It's not good. I can drag it onto the map and it will enter in edit modus. So now I can draw my field on the map and say, well, this is finished. And now I want to apply this logo onto the field. So I drag it to my field. It starts to process the image. And here a null pointer arises, but it should not affect the processing. So this will take a few seconds. And now it will enter a special edit modus in where I can adjust the size and the rotation of the image so it fits into the field. So to rotate it a bit further. So now I can see it fits. So this one will turn green. I click finish. And now it has created a task which I can display on the map. And this has this task I can actually export onto the planting device, and it will only plant on the parts that are black, and the white it will leave unplanted. Or I can plant another crop on the white parts. And if I, for example, have some green crop on the black parts and a yellow crop on the white parts, you can see the logo from the sky, which is pretty cool, I think.
NetBeans injection into the field.
Yeah. I think that's about it for me. Yes, we use auto-update. Yeah.
Would you be interested in leveraging JavaFX instead of NetBeans platform?
Yes, we are. We are already looking into ways we can implement JavaFX, and obviously there are charts, but we currently focus mainly on data entry. And at the time we are also implementing reports, we will definitely use the JavaFX charts. We want to create some custom charting for crop planning, so you can create something like swim lanes, that you drag a field into a swim lane, and then you can drag a crop into the same swim lane, and you can see all the tasks on a time frame or something like this. So we are looking for it. It will be quite some work, I think, to create, but it will be really cool in JavaFX.
I think some other people on the panel as well will be talking about their JavaFX integration that they've been working on. Okay, this is very cool. Let's switch to Sam. And Sam is kind of different to the rest of the people on the panel because everyone else here was present at NetBeans Day, where we had the same panel with the same people, except for Sam. So we're all interested to see what Sam is going to contribute to the session. Over to you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Sam Harwell. I work at Tunnel Vision Laboratories, and I'm also a student, PhD student at the University of Texas at Austin. What we do research for both work and at school is I do custom IDE development. The people that rely on us commercially are in-house languages. You got a lot of businesses that use scripting languages from very small to very, very big. You have a little scripting language that's used only by one company, but if they got 10,000 files in that language and they've got 100 developers working with it on a daily basis, they have some special IDE requirements. The other group is emerging languages, which is one that I've chosen for this particular demo. Somebody comes up with a great new language, it's supposed to be very productive, but in order to learn it and to use it and to evaluate it in our workplace, we expect tools to be available that work similar to what we're already using. Otherwise, it's not very helpful to us. What we need in order to get this done is a familiar interface. We need a platform that performs well, and especially one that's scalable, because we work with real projects at real companies. We also need an extensible platform, because we get customer requests that somebody didn't really plan for this one in the past, but if the platform's extensible, we're going to be able to handle it, and it's going to be affordable. Our demo is GoWorks. We chose to go big with this one as far as the language. It's general purpose. It's implicitly typed, which is a particularly interesting challenge for an IDE. The source file, the project we're using is the standard library as a whole. It's over 1,200 source files, and it took us less than 8 man-weeks of development time to put the whole thing together from a language specification, starting with just our framework and the NetBeans platform. We finished ahead of schedule, and we went through multiple iterations of UI testing and feedback and improvement to come up with what I am now going to demo. So this is one file out of the Go standard library. And when I look at things like this function signature, the X, DST, SRC, what I see is a function that was written by a team that wasn't using an IDE at all. They didn't choose these names to be descriptive or easy to read. They chose them so they didn't have to type so many characters as they're working. So what we do is we give it a responsive IDE that can keep up with somebody that's typing, and they can type the same method, but instead of using shortened names, I'll just go ahead and put in destination, source. We'll use full-length names, and you can see what this would look like if I was going to continue typing. And so this is where it starts to get interesting. I is less than len of SRC. SRC is what they named it above. Well, they picked SRC because it kind of looks like source, it's just missing the vowels. Well, this one picks up on it. And because it picks up on it really, really fast, I don't have to wait or press control space or anything else like that. I just press open parentheses, SRC, close parentheses, and I can keep going. And so this was our general approach. So for block, I'll just use BLK. That's easy to type. OUU is outused. And so it learns as well from what I end up using on that particular session. So it will start to simply keep up with me as I start doing.
So this seems faster than I'm used to in NetBeans IDE. I must say, the way you're typing now.
Yes.
What's the reason for that?
So this is where it's really interesting how extensible NetBeans is. We got this request to handle a code completion for an imperative, or for an implicitly typed language. It's similar for a dynamically typed language where it starts to get a little fuzzy on what exactly is going to be allowed where. We were actually able to replace the code completion module's rendering section to allow us to display a little bit of extra information in cases like this, where the person has the ability to type I:= for a new declaration. We were able to modify this box to include that declaration information at the top without removing their ability to scroll through the list of suggestions if they were going to reference something instead. And so by having both of them available all of the time, that allows me to type very fluidly with very predictable results, and most of the time, almost all the time. I'm not actually looking at the thing popping up. I just know it's going to be there if I need to look at something I'm typing in a new file or something like that. But for the most part, it flickers a little bit, but you get used to it, because mostly what you get used to is you get used to this ability to type shorthand without having to press extra characters. You just type shorthand and out comes what you meant, what you were thinking. So it's really an enjoyable development experience once you get to use one that is that fluid.
So is this the reason why this isn't a plugin for NetBeans IDE? Because you've actually
yes.
got your own implementation of the editor?
So far, we've been slowly, we were using a platform that was a separate application, but we had some requests to pull it in as, can we get support for Go in our regular NetBeans build that we're doing with some other stuff? And so we started migrating modules from custom builds over into as just being regular plugins, and the only one left is some of the UI for this code completion module isn't compatible with that. So we'll either get it migrated. We've been working together to get a patch that preserves existing functionality for everybody that's using that API right now. And if we get that in, we'll be able to you'll have the option basically for any language that's implemented in it. It'll have the option of using this style of user interface or the other one, which looks very similar, but there's just a few behavior differences for the learning characteristics.
And in addition to this IDE, you also have another one, AntlerWorks, or the new implementation of AntlerWorks.
Right.
Can you tell us a bit about that? And what it is, maybe for those who don't know.
AntlerWorks is an IDE for a DSL that I use on a daily basis. Antler is a grammar description that I use to describe programming languages. So when I started working on this project, I first took the language specification and wrote it in Antler's language. So I have an IDE to help me on a daily basis work with that language, and it's called AntlerWorks. It works similar to this, although the language doesn't have very many expressions and things like that this one does, so it works like this, but it's not nearly as exciting because there's the complexity of what you type is much smaller. So yeah, it's one that in general, we can throw one together for something that's a trivial language. I mean, it's not trivial in practice, but the language is very small. We can put one of those together in 2 days.
So does this mean that at some point when someone interested in Antler goes to antler.org and downloads the AntlerWorks IDE, they'll be downloading the
Yes.
NetBeans platform-based AntlerWorks?
Yes, for AntlerWorks 2, which is we've got a beta version up as Antler 4 is finalized. We'll be moving everybody to encouraging them to use AntlerWorks 2, and it will be one of the NetBeans-based environments.
Fantastic. And when is that going to happen?
You can download it right now. There's a bug in it if you want to use it to work with version 3 grammars, which is sort of a legacy mode. It doesn't work right now. But other than that, yes, you can go download it from the Tunnel Vision Lab site. And this demo that I'm running, the project and the demo is on our site. I'm running it, the one that's straight off the site.
Perfect. Thanks. Switching to a whole different use case, we're going to go to Rob with 2 different scenarios, 2 different applications, also with an interest in JavaFX
all the way down there
that you see being used. So a stock trading application and also a freight management software.
You're just unplugged with the Ethernet cord? Or is that, there we go. Just make sure it's still giving. Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Rob Terpolowski, and I'm an applications architect for a freight and logistics firm called Linden Incorporated, based in Seattle and Anchorage. And also in my copious free time, I develop trading strategies and write software to implement those trading strategies. So I'm going to demo a couple of applications that are written on top of the NetBeans platform. So the first one here is called Freight Management System, FMS for short. And this is an application that's used internally at Linden by two sets of user groups. The first one is customer service agents. When they need to look up information about a customer shipment that calls in, they're able to go into this application and find that information, a detail about the customer and any shipments that they have pending. And then also our warehouse managers use this as a planning tool. So it gives them visibility as to the freight that's inbound to their terminal and also the freight that's outbound, so they can plan their nightly shifts and figure out how to best position trailers at the warehouses so they can get unloaded and then loaded into the delivery trailers as efficiently as possible. So this is the first iteration of this application, actually, and it's going to be going through some pretty extensive refinement, and I see that my menus have gotten chopped off there, so hopefully I'm able to do this. So in the planning application, so Linden actually owns about 50 operating companies that each operate in their own sort of niche market. The 5 big ones, though, are listed in this drop-down, and they're the primary users of this application. So Linden International is one of our air freight forwarders, so I'll go ahead and pick say I want to be looking for Linden International shipments, and let's see, since we're in San Francisco, why don't we see what freight is coming and going. And there actually is a search button all the way over there on the side, and there we go. So it's going out there and querying our database through web services. This application is backed by a Universe database, and I always like to ask this question. Just out of curiosity, how many people out there are using Universe? Okay, that's Doug. I work with Doug. He doesn't count. Yes, you are. So I guess so I probably should rephrase the question. Has anybody heard of Universe? No. Okay, that's too bad, because my manager authorized me to hire anybody on the spot that answered yes to that question, and nobody has answered yes to that question. So the application picks up the data from the database and organizes it by destination. This table here is by JideSoft, which is a third-party commercial library for Swing applications. And it gives us a little more flexibility over the regular JTable in that you can sort by multiple columns, you can filter. So it allows the user to kind of drill down and only see the information that they want to see. And then also the table gives you the ability to nest other tables inside of it. So if the warehouse manager wants to see all the freight that's outbound to Honolulu, they can expand the Honolulu table row, and this is showing them all the shipping containers at that location that are heading for Honolulu, and then they can drill into that further to get actual information about the shipments themselves. A shipment can have multiple pieces of freight. They can have multiple boxes, for example, or multiple pallets. And so if the user wants to then see more details about the actual freight that's part of the shipment, they can double-click on the shipment, and it brings up some various pieces of information about the shipment, or the freight on that shipment, as well as any scan events, which we're using these barcode scanners in the warehouse, so this application ties into that so that the user can see the history of that particular piece of freight. The customer service application or module, I won't get too much into that because the user interface looks very similar. It's just organizing this data by customers rather than by locations. So now that I kind of showed you how this UI looks, we're going to be completely changing it in the next revision of this application, and we're going to be implementing all these components with JavaFX rather than using the JIDE tables that we have here. It's the feedback that we're getting is just an overwhelming amount of data that the users are looking at, especially when they're at a really busy facility that has, hundreds or thousands of shipments going in and out of it every week. So we're going to try to condense the data, make it more clear to the users by only including the absolute minimum amount of information that they need to make their decisions. And then I will go ahead and demo the trading app. So I've been reworking the user interface on this, and so I wasn't able to demo it on Sunday when I had hoped to, and my hypothesis was that the amount of progress I would make this week on refining this application was going to be inversely related to the amount of beer I consumed, and that was actually the case. So I don't have the actual automated trading piece of this particular strategy up and running yet, but I was able to incorporate some JavaFX charts and some other widgets to kind of polish the UI up a little bit. So what this application does is I can write a trading strategy as a plugin and then have it imported into the application. And I'm using Interactive Brokers as the trading platform provider for the market data and executing the trades. And I'll just show you what their UI looks like. So they have this is a Java desktop application that they've written, and it's going out there and showing real-time prices on some various financial instruments, including crude oil, corn, Swiss francs. So this application has a Java API built in, and so we can write programs that interface with this application, and then this application then goes ahead and actually places the trades. So this application that I wrote, which is called ArbTrader, because I initially wrote it to take advantage of some arbitrage opportunities that me and a few other people I work with have identified. And each one of these sort of plugins are implemented as their own NetBeans plugins. So potentially we could have different market data providers. I only have Interactive Brokers listed here. But you could have a plugin for Yahoo Data and for Google Finance as well. And there's lots of other data providers out there as well. Has ability.
So each node that you see in the projects window is a separate module? Or
It's so each top level node is its own separate abstract plugin, and then the things that you see once you expand the market data, that's an Interactive Brokers implementation of the market data module. And so there's other various pieces of data that can be used to construct these real-time trading strategies. So some of them need historical data, so they can go query Interactive Brokers and say, give me the prices of British pounds for the last 24 hours, which I'll show here. So the only strategy I have had since I've been reworking the UI, that's actually in the UI right now, is a strategy that I've worked very hard on for this presentation called buy low, sell high. So depending on what brokers and market data providers are configured, you can have the strategy subscribe to any one of those. So the really cool thing about the NetBeans platform is there's this loose coupling between all the plugins, which is really cool because I can throw another plugin in there for market data, and the application will discover at runtime what implementations are available. So I have two implementations of the market data provider here, for example. So, this basically initializes the strategy, and then the GUI will come up, and hopefully. So I'm saying I want to monitor the British pound exchange rate. The trade size is 25,000 British pounds, and the name of the strategy, we'll just call it GEP strategy. And cool, it came up. So yeah, the resolution is a little scrunched. It looked a lot better before I was running it on this thing here. So this is a JavaFX chart right here, and the rest of these components are just plain old swing components. So the real-time prices are displayed up here. These are just hard-coded labels right now, but when the application makes a trade, the time the trade was closed out, the amount of time that it was in that trade for, as well as the profit or loss, is is displayed there. So I'll go ahead and connect to the interactive brokers, and it's really cool if I can see the rest of this chart. But it's basically using these are called candlestick charts, and they showed it in the ensemble demo, and it made it appear that it was actually one of the base charts in the JavaFX library, but it's not. It's a custom chart, so it took me a little bit to actually get this working. So, and then you can see up here the prices are being updated in real time from via the Interactive Brokers API. So the next step to kind of finish this off is to actually have it place the trades and then update this trade window here. So
cool. So this is something that you're planning to use for yourself, or you want to do something bigger with it?
This is something for myself and a couple other people that I develop trading strategies with. So it's supposed to it's to make because I have a day job.
Right.
So so this places the trades automatically, and it's not something we want to publish just because it gives us a somewhat competitive edge in trading. So.
Right. Cool. Excellent.
That's all
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Let's switch to Sweden and Henry.
Swiss. Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, that is a good long chart.
Yeah.
When the rest of the
Oh yeah.
Yes. Henry from Sweden.
With Thomas from Sweden.
With Thomas from Sweden here. We've been working for quite a while on a product called BL Economy. It's a small business solution for people wanting to do their accounting, invoicing, salaries, stuff like that. And what we're looking at on this page is like an overview for this made-up company. And I think what we're looking at right here is probably where we will start to inject JavaFX instead, because I don't know if you agree, but I think Swing has taken quite a beating this week. and it's obvious this page doesn't represent a certain problem that we need to have solved, but having to sort of walk the JavaFX way is something in itself that we feel that we must start, and this is probably where we will begin. So it's quite probable that I'll come back next year and do a presentation on how it went, because what we have here is this is a client. The data itself is a hosted solution. We have a server. We use Spring, GPA, Hibernate, all the expected stuff, and it's offered as a subscription. And we have a little more than 2,000 subscribers right now, doing a monthly subscription, and it's increasing quite rapidly. So that too has to be taken into consideration when we start messing around with the platform, because our customers tend to be quite conservative as far as changes and what to expect, and they know what they have now, but they, so that has to be taken into consideration as well. You can enter business events. Just made up numbers. And it's entered into the list of events that you later on can browse and see how your company is doing, pretty much. I'm not going to go into detail about the program's functionality, but I will say this, that if you look at most of the showcase applications, it is my opinion that most of them are made to fit the needs of large organizations, most likely in-house products, or at least made to fit a certain organization's needs. Whereas we actually sell this product for all three major platforms, and users that may or may not know what Java is, may or may not know what, how any installation related incidents will most likely show up on our radar sooner or later. So we have a quite skilled couple of guys and girls that work with supporting those people. It's not a huge challenge, but it's still there. Other than that, well, can just click around a little bit.
So this would be a good candidate for, or not so much this, but your browser for replacement with the JavaFX WebKit implementation.
Yep. I think so. I think so. And also, a very common question is, why did we not make this a browser solution to start out with? Because most of our competition did, and that actually can be answered. Well, it has a lot of answers to that, but the browser, we feel, is like the jack of all trades, master of none. So unless you're willing to put enormous effort, and we built this on the equivalent of about 2 full-time people, a little larger team, but about 2 or 3 people built this, and so we profited hugely on the platform work that was already done, and to where we could build this, we feel, very dynamic user experience. You can click here and it updates here and there. It's very fluent experience, we feel, and we could do that with very little effort compared to a lot of the other solutions, and so we would either get stuck in, if we were to take the same team size and go the web way, we could either end up stuck in static reload land, or else have to have a much larger team. Because even though you can do stuff with Ajax and I don't know, Google Web Toolkits and all the other frameworks, it takes a lot of work.
So I'm actually going to mirror a question that I got a few times at the demo floor over this conference, and I want to know from your perspectives as end users of the NetBeans platform what your response is. I think the question can be summarized to say, with the kind of maturing of HTML5-based technologies and things of that sort, is it the beginning of the end of the desktop platform? Like, is it the beginning of the end of native platforms? What are your thoughts on that?
We talk about that a lot, and my opinion is that if everything is to be consumed through a browser, there really isn't a difference between an operating system and a browser anymore. And so you could omit either one, which would end up being the browser, in my opinion, and then you would go on full circle. So you're back to the difference between a very well, the difference between an application like this and a browser-based application doing the same stuff. I think we won't have this conversation in 3 or 4 years, because it's not going to be. We've seen the tools this week. You can compile native installers for most of the stuff we're talking about, and so the browser's role as infrastructure for these kinds of jobs, I don't think it's going to be considered important in a couple of years. Just my thoughts.
Comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
I generally find that in the stuff that I work on, extremely high performance responsive interfaces is absolutely crucial for the stuff that I do. And right now, the browsers can't do it. But then there's questions of, are they going to be able to do it? Give it a little bit more hardware, give it a little bit more time, are they going to be able to do it? Maybe. But at the same time as they're able to do that, I'll be able to use a desktop program, do the same thing, and save you CPU usage, which will give you better battery life on the go, which will still be just as relevant then as it is now.
2 more maybe?
Well, I don't think HTML5 is mature, and it will not be for the next couple of years, I think. And well, in our case, we work with farmers, and farmers do not always have a very good internet connection. And with a rich client application, they are able to walk on their field with their laptops and enter data. And as soon as if they have a fully working application, even the map just works. And they just enter back to the farm, and when they have a connection again, it will synchronize with the server. And well, that kind of functionality, it will be a long time until we have that in the browser. And why would we want to have that in the browser? Not everything has to be the same. There's difference, and everything has its place.
Yeah. There's also similar the liquid robotics demo by James Gosling this morning. He was using Whirlwind inside Swing. And he seemed perfectly fine with that. And he was actually saying this is a wonderful combination, and not everything in the world is HTML based. And I think the question is whether this is a niche and how large that niche is. And if these cases are all exceptions, but then if you add up all of those exceptions, if you then get to a larger whole, then you're not in a niche anymore.
I think the Swing world is much bigger than it seems, because the web people are just making more noise.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, it's true.
Okay, I'm just going to wrap this up. I just wanted to show you what we've done with customizing the look and feel. I have two instances running. It looks black, but you can come and watch it on my computer as well. Later on, if you want to see it, we just customized the Nimbus look and feel, so we think it looks quite nicely. And we also added another experimental look and feel. Let's see if I can get that running as well, just to sort of showcase that you can do pretty nice stuff in Swing as well. It's restarting, and it's come on, okay. Just like that. So there are ways to make Swing look nice as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Let's switch to the final speaker. Stephen, and Garrick is in the audience with an application in the reservoir management in the oil and shale gas business.
I need the HDMI.
Oh, I was handing it down.
No, I got it plugged in. I just need the button. How's it going?
I've pressed the 3.
3?
Let me try.
There.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, but now I can't see my screen. I have the other screen now, but I don't have mine. All right, this is going to be interesting because I can't see it on my screen. I'm Stephen Donofsky. I was the chief application architect at Object Reservoir, and just this last July, Object Reservoir was acquired by Halliburton. So now we're Halliburton employees. Is it good? So let's skip here. The product I was going to talk about today is called Limits. A little blurb about it. Basically, it's a reservoir engineering tool, and we're trying to help estimate the uncertainty in the future performance of the wells. Let's go ahead and see if I can get the demo. Okay. So this is the tool here in NetBeans the NetBeans platform, and as you notice, when it first, if I can get my mouse, there we go. When the app first comes up, we have a few workflow steps. And the idea behind this is we start with a simple step and get more complex as you go through. So the initial thing, we load in production data, which is loaded in through a database, Excel spreadsheet, other stuff like that. And then we pull up specification data and into that, and each step gets more complex as it goes and gets more information out. And some things about these workflow steps, each one is a module suite. They have their own persistence entities in them, their own UI definitions, and everything is there. They're fully pluggable. You can add in new steps, take out steps. I think the version that Garrick showed earlier had a few more steps in there, and a lot of that was reworking the ones we had. Probably took about a week to be able to customize all that. And I can show you in NetBeans, this is the layer file that we're using to define those steps, one of the workflow steps that we have. And it's all declarative in the UI, tells you where the data is coming from, where it goes in the UI and everything. So it's just one layer file that you can edit and change around, and that will redefine what is in your workflow step. And a couple other things that we have that's unique in here that I haven't seen anywhere else is the way that we're defining our entities. We'll go over to some more interesting ones over here. Like I said, I can't see my screen. So. What we have here is, this is an individual bean, and these are the property or the attributes that are on that bean. Because we have a scientific application, we needed to actually add units to those values. So to be able to get the value and the unit to go with the attribute and with the bean, is what we did is we took each attribute from the bean, made it its own bean with different attributes, one being the label, one being the value, and one being the unit, and displayed those in an outline view with the actual bean being on the top, and then a couple other beans that don't really exist being the values in there. Other things that helped us do, if I can get, my tooltip is not coming, because my tooltip is coming up on the other monitor. We have range validation on here that's also defined in the beans, and that is actually defined one in two different ways. We have added annotations for attributes for the beans that you can put, and you can actually add in the ranges in that. Or, if I can find, the other way we did it is with the resource file. So in the resource file, we actually have this line right here, which is defining what the min and max values for these attributes in our beans. And if I come in here on one of these, see if I can move that. So I entered an invalid range. It pulls up a dialog box telling me I entered an invalid range. I have the ability from this dialog to either specify a min or max value, enter the value that really I wanted, or what I can also do is accept this value as correct, even though it comes invalid. And what that does is that cancels the veto event that was thrown to pull up the dialog box and lets it go through as if it wasn't vetoed, and then gets set. Now, we know the value is outside of range, so we're able to display that this might be a problem. They did something weird. They've specified a value that's outside of range. Shows up as highlighted with the little exclamation mark that says, watch out about this. The last thing that I think is pretty unique about what we have here is, as I mentioned about the workflow steps, each workflow step is its own module suite, and it defines its entities that we're using in the database. So we have one database for the project, one entity manager, and a whole bunch of different modules that we don't know until runtime what entities are going to be in there. So we're using Eclipse Link 2.3 and the Composite the Composite entity factory managers. Lost my notes here on that. So yeah, so we're using the composite entity managers to actually take each one of these individual persistence XML files and combine them into one entity manager. The only thing that we kind of had to do, which is a little tricky on that, is we don't know what jar files to use when the app is built. We only know it when the app is run by what modules are loaded. So we had to actually create our own persistence unit info, add the jar files at runtime, and then create the entity manager. And it works really nice of getting a lot of dynamic persistence coming in there and stuff like that. And that's about it.
Thanks.
Question. So all these are very different, but there are some things that are common, of course, about NetBeans. One of them is the help. For your end users, how do you implement it to help to give them instructions they need to run the tools?
Anyone want to answer? How many seconds it took?
How many? Yeah, it was very easy, and one of the first thing I wrote a Twitter about it, that it was so easy that developers have no reason anymore to not write help for the users. And we migrated all documentation to the help, and the whole user manual is now in the help as well. And it's really easy to link the help with the GUI components, so you have a really good interaction with.
And you
built-in help that comes with
yes.
Yes.
generate the
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the session that's coming up from 2 to 3 in the Getting Started with the NetBeans platform, we'll be sure to include that if you come.
I've seen both people having links to a website or a Word document, and sometimes using
Built-in help.
APIs.
Yeah.
I could,
Sure.
I could just add what we're doing. This project is run by a book publishing company, so we have tons of people that know the domain and want to contribute to our help like that. But they ended up not wanting to edit it within this tool, so we ended up actually setting up a wiki for them to enter the data or the information, and then we wrote a project that pulled the data out of the wiki and compiled them and added it to our source. So that's how we ended up getting it, making it available to the ones that actually knew the stuff that we wanted to include.
Cool. Any? Yes.
So, I mean, a lot of people have talked about JavaFX and the NetBeans platform, but there's decisions to be made to figure out. I mean, there is a nice swing panel that you put JavaFX inside, but you still have event listeners on one hand and tasks on the other hand, and property change listeners on one end, and bound properties on the other end. Is there standard advice as to how to integrate in a meaningful way so that we don't end up with models that are half JavaFX or half Swing if they're interoperating?
Well, if you're going to include JavaFX, you are going to have modules that are half JavaFX and half Swing.
The problem is in the domain, because you have domain objects and you want to attach listeners to listen to data change, but Swing listeners are different from JavaFX listeners. So you will have to include JavaFX in your domain modules as well, which is a bit weird because beans are beans, and it doesn't really matter if they are JavaFX beans or Swing beans, or they're just data containers. So. But that's a bit awkward indeed, and I think we will have to end up chaining listeners to support both Swing and JavaFX.
Right, I mean, so if there was a standard Swing listener that could be bound to a JavaFX property, and if everybody did it that way, as opposed to everybody writing their own binding to this.
Exactly.
So, I mean, is there a forum right now that's saying this is the best practices?
No.
Or integrating JavaFX
There are tutorials describing how to get started, and Paul and Gail have done a tutorial session this week, showing you how to integrate JavaFX charts into an application. And there isn't an official standard way of how to do these things, but there are different solutions that people are working on. and maybe that can percolate up to an official approach at some point.
I mean, I was at the tutorial, there's also the tutorial on the website, but those aren't really addressing the...
Right.
It's basically, this is how you patch JavaFX on the NetBeans.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really saying how do you make...
Well, it's patch in the sense of how do you put JavaFX charts into a JFX panel, and that's the standard way of integrating JavaFX into Swing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly data points that we've got to take in and have some discussions on, and that's clearly one of the few things that I, or being at my chart, responsible for the NetBeans, is kind of look into this and see, you know, if that's potentially being looked into. But as of now, the answer is
no. Yeah.
just as of now.
But I think, but part of the answer is also that different people are working on solutions, and once those have been discussed and blogged about and whatever, those can percolate up to becoming some official kind of standard. Yes.
You could think about a standardized adapter for bridging Swing and JavaFX, and this could be one solution for migration for many applications. Are you know any development goes in this direction to develop to make the bridge between the both worlds smaller, so that you can migrate that huge Swing application to Java?
Yeah. Right now the bridge is purely the JFX panel. That's it. Yeah.
That's something we want to look into.
Are any of you using the plugin manager?
Probably everybody.
Yes.
Yep. Yes, we are.
And then what's the plugin manager there? So some of you are using it, or all of you are using it?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the key reasons why people use the NetBeans platform in the first place.
I just wondered how much you use it compared to...
We currently support 3 kinds of sensors, but it's very unlikely a farmer has all 3. So we disable them all by default, and the farmer can just pick whatever hardware he has. Yeah.
We've gone slightly over our time. Are there other questions at this point? If not, feel free to come up afterwards. And also remember that there's a session which will be pure coding, no slides, showing you how to get started with the NetBeans platform from 2 to 3 in Continental Ballroom 789. Thanks for coming.
That's what I said. Good job.